So I'm going to just do a quick summary from my table, and we've decided that sometimes it's hard to have just one mentor. Sometimes you need mentors for different parts of your life, different parts of your career. And so you want more than one person. You want maybe a board of directors to help you figure out your path. Next is Dr. Jill Baren, who's going to talk about what it is to be a good mentor.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm glad that we have such an intimate group here today. And I'm going to be pretty brief because I think these table discussions are actually very valuable. I think getting one-on-one feedback and making connections and taking home, points that are going to be useful to you is much better than me standing up here with a bunch of slides. So I did promise that I would tell you a bit of a story. And let's see. There we go. So to the left of the slide is Dr. James S. Seidel. And Dr. Seidel is one of the fathers of pediatric emergency medicine, right up there with Stephen Ludwig and Gary Fleischer. And together, the three of them really defined the field of pediatric emergency medicine. Jim did it more from the perspective of pre-hospital care and was actually one of the people who was early on engaged in the J. Michael Criley Paramedic Training Institute on the campus of Harbor UCLA, where I actually happened to be an emergency medicine resident. And you guys are way too young to remember the show Rampart, where they called Rampart the paramedic, and it was all about LA County and the EMS response. And so Jim was really the person out there championing skilled practice of pre-hospital care for the pediatric population, and was truly a person who we can all say has contributed markedly to the health and welfare of children. But anyway, how did I meet Jim? So Jim was a faculty member in our program, and it was through, indeed, a failed attempt at otoscopy. I was an intern doing my very first rotation in the pediatric emergency department, and boy, was I unskilled, and I was fumbling around and, attempting to get the parent to help me, and I was sort of sheepishly going back and reporting to Jim, who was my preceptor during that shift, that I couldn't see the tympanic membrane. And he very gruffly got up out of his chair. He was a very fastidious and sort of very grumpy person on the outside, and he ran back into the room, and he quickly did everything that you really should never do, which is basically use brute force to, hold the child down, and quickly demonstrated to me how not to do the ear exam. And ended up, we saw what we needed to see. But a few minutes after that, we actually had the opportunity to have a discussion about who I was, why I had chosen to come to Harbor UCLA to do my emergency medicine residency, and what my future aspirations were. And he really looked at me in the eye, really focused, really listened, asked a few probing questions, and that was kind of it. And I didn't work with him again until I was about ready to start my third year of residency, when I got a call from my program director who said, Jill, we're considering you for the chief resident position. Is that something you'd like to do? And I said, I've been really thinking about academics and what should I do to prime myself, to put myself in the position to succeed. I need a niche, I need a focus, I want to learn research methodology, and I'm toying with the idea that I might do this around pediatric emergency medicine, because it was the first year that pediatric emergency medicine as a subspecialty was being opened up to emergency physician graduates. And I had that kind of pioneering spirit. In fact, I went into an emergency medicine residency the year before we had a board specialty, and my residency director said, you know what, let me call you back. And he picked up the phone and he called Jim Seidel. And within a half hour, Jim had called Washington, D.C., and had me a fully funded pediatric emergency medicine fellowship, and called me up and said, Jill, you're going to change the face of pediatric emergency medicine. We don't have anybody in emergency medicine doing this. You're going to be one of the inaugural people. You're going to do this fellowship with me. We're going to do policy. We're going to do research. We're going to do clinical rotations. You're going to sit for the boards. And I'm sitting in my apartment in Southern California, and I just realized that my destiny had been written. And it was pretty hard to say no. So there's a little hyperbole involved in that story, but I can tell you sight unseen, this person jump-started my career like no other. And yes, he did remember that silly little encounter that I had with him as an intern, but what he did was exhibit all of the attributes that I would like to share here with you today. And the first lesson is what may start as a chance occurrence can end up as one of your most important professional relationships. So everybody in this room needs to make sure that they pay it forward. So let's really kind of consider the personal attributes of what I think makes a good mentor. You have to be genuine. This is not a checkbox. This is not something you put on your CV for show. You might be asked on an NIH biosketch or in a grant application to demonstrate that you have provided research mentorship, and again in your promotion process, but it has to be genuine. You have to show that you are invested in that situation. We talked about this already. You cannot be threatened by the talents or ambitions of your mentee, because ultimately they will succeed you. They will do better than you, and you should want that. You really want to make sure that your product is going out there and is going to be better than you in the long run. You want to make sure that this person empowers you to be who you want to be, not some idea that they've created in their mind or somebody else's idea. Or I see this happening a lot in formal mentorship programs where it's set out a set of expectations and you have to abide by them, and this is often crafted by virtue of the rank that you're in your institution. But you've got to really know who that person is you're taking on. You should be invested in their success for unselfish reasons, not for a political angle or using them to further your own agenda. This really has to be very, very pure. Good mentors are discerning people. They don't just take on a whole crowd and then not have time for those people, but rather they should select and think about a protege who they feel is really open to advisement and has a track record of putting forth significant effort. And then I think it goes without saying you want somebody who is dedicated, reliable, and trustworthy. There we go. And a very important ingredient is enthusiasm. You want that person to be joyful when you go to their office, not somebody, again, who feels that they must do this because it's a checkbox. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of wanting to be a really positive role model. And that is what you want to exude. You want to set yourself out to be that in order to attract the most talented proteges and mentees. I think another really important quality of being a good mentor is learning how to be a situational analyst, because there are some very finite, particular, specific things that you will need to do to provide your mentee with the best advice. So, for example, knowing the promotion requirements, knowing what works in your institution culturally and what doesn't, knowing the hidden language of relationships, which means you have to be able to give honest feedback without being demeaning. That is, I think, extraordinarily difficult and takes a lot of practice. You want to identify your mentee's strengths and make the most of them, serve as a sounding board. You really want to ask more questions than answer them, so it's that art of very careful, quiet listening, open, clear, direct communication. Those are things that mentees most often appreciate. And then I would say, encourage them to be bold. Let's do some risk-taking here. It's not just about the safe pathway. It's not just about getting through the system. It's about finding what can unlock the passion, and that might require some sidestepping, some very unconventional decision-making around one's career, and a great mentor is going to find that spark, is going to ignite it, and is going to empower you to do that. What are the behaviors that you want to see in this relationship? Your mentor should always keep your goals, needs, and situations top of mind, rather than or as well as their own, right? So this is really about you, and I know there's going to be some discussion about two-way street, but I think these are behaviors that are particularly important for good mentors. This person is a cheerleader for you. They're standing behind you. They're helping you to develop realistic expectations. They're helping you to set concrete goals, which is difficult for many of us, and then helps you reach them. So it is, in essence, kind of a negotiated agreement between the two parties, and then they're there to facilitate and make sure that you complete that agreement and it happens. No micromanaging here. This person teaches you to fish, but they don't fish for you. They don't call up the chair and tell them what to do for you. They teach you how to have that conversation before you go in the room, right? They don't write the paper for you. They critique it and edit it. So it's very important that that is a person who does not do the work for you. And then it really is, again, that role modeling and demonstrating what it takes to be productive and successful. Here are some of the red flag behaviors that you do not want to see in a good mentor. You want to make sure that they're not hiding things from you, okay? So if transparency in your discussions is missing, that's probably not a fruitful relationship, and I would move on. Integrity is of the utmost importance. It's not do as I say, it's do as I do, okay? So you want to set that example, you want to be true to that, and when you pass along advice, make sure you are giving advice that you yourself would take. And then again, make sure that person has your back. If that person is going to flop on a dime during the next conversation, particularly if you're in an institution that there may be some political tension or there may be some struggles or jealousy among colleagues or faculty, you really need to make sure that that person is watching out for you. That's key to being successful in an organization, having an effective mentor. I guess I'll conclude by saying that most people actually don't have effective mentors, and it's terrific that we're doing sessions like this because we want to inculcate that amongst our colleagues here at SAEM and more widely within emergency medicine. So if you have that person, boy, hold on to them. If not, keep looking. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Let's discuss.
I've had several mentors throughout my training, but all of my mentors have been very hands-off. They're incredibly approachable. They're people that I can bounce ideas off. If I'm having a stressful situation, I can most certainly go to them. But as far as like helping me structure my time and my productivity, specifically my academic productivity and my scholarship, now that I'm at the 7-year mark and I need to be going up for promotion, I didn't know that I needed to be asking for more structure from them. And I've sort of been blown away by how a simple ask has led to monthly meetings and writing meetings and check-ins and accountability. Like, you know, they were so hands-off before, and it's just because they didn't know what I needed, because I didn't tell them what I needed, because it turns out nobody's clairvoyant. But I think when you're a mentee, though, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think maybe the folks who are mentors in the room can sort of talk about how you dig out those holes and help your mentees identify what their needs are. Because sometimes they just don't know.
I can, yeah. So I think that's a really good point. I think, you know, some of it is at the, you know, hopefully at the department level where you're meeting hopefully yearly or twice a year or however many times with a chair and somebody who, at least from a promotions point of view, can help you go through that type of stuff. But I think as a mentor, that is part of the question, and as a mentee, right, together is figure out what is this relationship about and what's the point of it, right? Is it something to help me get through this research project and come up with a paper and learn research methodology, or is it to eventually get promoted, et cetera? So I think as a mentor, at least I try to ask or try to figure out, like, what are you hoping to get out of it, right? And obviously a student's going to have very different goals than a resident, than a junior faculty, et cetera. But that would be something also from a department level to think about how as a department, is there something that can get structured for all faculty so that people don't reach that 7-year mark and then be like, oh, you know, where am I at and have I done all the things that, you know, I need to do to get promoted? So I think some of it is mentorship and some of it might be a little bit bigger or broader than that.
have a question just about, is there an ideal amount of seniority to be a good mentor? Because I found that now I'm 6 years out of residency, and I found that people are coming to me to ask for mentorship, and yet I am just about to start a K and need a lot of mentorship myself. So at what point do you say, okay, now I'm ready to step into this role where I can do monthly mentorship meetings with someone else versus being the taking person?
There is no moment at which you are ready to be a mentor. Everyone in this room should be a mentor. The least senior person in this room is this guy right here, and he should be a mentor to someone who is coming up behind him, because whether that's a middle school student or a high school student or undergraduate who wants to be who he is, the whole point of being a mentor is to give back. Every one of us, from the moment, whether it was our parents who mentored us or our grandparents or some teacher in our high school who mentored us, somebody's been giving to us our whole freaking lives, and that's how we got to where we are. And if you're not giving back right this moment, then you're not doing it right. We all need to be giving back, and we all need to be mentors, and there's no seniority level at which you're like, yes, you may be a mentor now. That's not how this works. We all need to be giving back right this minute, including that guy right there.
You can mentor up. Go for it. You can mentor up, right? Students can mentor, residents can mentor, attendings, junior faculty can mentor senior faculty. I mean, depending on what the topic is. I actually just texted a friend of mine and said, hey, did you end up putting me on your CV as a mentee? And he goes, yeah, did you put me on yours for the writing that you basically taught me how to do? So, okay. And he's 5 years senior to me, so you can do that.
Yeah, I do. I may disagree with some other people in the room, but I want to think about the difference between someone who helps you learn a skill and someone who's a mentor, because a mentor is a slightly different thing than somebody who teaches you how to do a skill. A mentor is someone who looks out for you, is someone who helps you advance your career, who leads you to opportunities that allow you to stretch and grow into new positions and new leadership and new research and new places in your lives. It's not just someone who teaches you how to do some statistics or to write a paper or to join a club, right? It's somebody who has your back and is always looking out for you, and when an opportunity comes along says, hey, that guy is really amazing and wants to do emergency medicine. Let's ask that guy to do something, and provides that guy with an opportunity to move forward in his career and advance. Sorry to keep picking on you. So it's slightly different.
I think actually that point, just to resonate on that, no, it's okay, but I got 2 seconds, which is to say that I think that Jill's point about the fellowship director earlier is actually really salient to that exact point, which is not all fellowship directors are going to be your mentors. They may teach you that skill, but they may or may not be your mentor, and I think that distinction is important, Jane.
Yeah, so I want to echo Jane's point is that, you know, a mentorship relationship really is a longitudinal relationship. It is not, we have all kinds of collaborations, we teach each other things all the time. That's not necessarily a mentor-mentee relationship. I wanted to go back to the question that you asked, which is, I agree with you, you don't have to be to a certain level, but, you know, to take you, for example, you're starting your K. So your time is going to be very limited, and this is a time when this is a formative time for you. So you're not too young to take somebody on, but you've got to take somebody on with the knowledge of how much time is this going to take, because this is a formative time of your research development, your development, and so am I going to be able to give that commitment to this individual? I have somebody in our faculty who's on a K who actually is a mentor for a resident, for example. But that takes a lot of time. So you absolutely have the ability, so you need to know, again, this goes back to sort of the question that was initially asked, which is you need to know what's needed in that relationship, how much time is that going to take, and then you ask yourself, do I have the expertise to do this? And no doubt that there will be things that you absolutely in this stage in your career have the expertise to do. You're going to need to decide time for you and in this stage of your career.
So when you, chairs and past chairs, think about the mentors you've had, what sort of qualities come to mind as things that we should be looking for or things that we should be demonstrating to our mentees?
So Jill pointed out a topic, I forget what you called it, some kind of analyst, a situational analyst, yeah. So I don't know if any of you have read the book called Radical Candor. It's Kim Scott, and there's if you don't have time like me, there's like a YouTube video that she does, like a TED Talk, I should say, TED Talk, and then also there's a website. But it's all about being able to give people direct feedback, but in a way that's in a caring, right? So I think we all know people who give you feedback and it's maybe not in a nice way, or people try to sugarcoat everything and just say you're great and you're wonderful, and neither of those are very helpful. So thinking about how to give somebody feedback, but in a really caring and truthful way. And I think that's a really good, important thing for a mentor to do, is be able to really honestly assess somebody, do it in a caring way, and hopefully there's a trust, that's built up between the two of them. But to be honest about it and be able to give that feedback, because I think that's the only way we grow and that we build and we are able to succeed.
I think the other thing that's important is getting to know your mentee, not just in the academic realm, but getting to know them as a person as well, and then being willing to sort of meet them and go to their space and develop them from where they are right now. So it's whether that's, they need to learn the most basic skills in whatever they're trying to get mentorship in, or they're mid-career or whatever it is. So I think really getting to know them and understand them. I think it's equally important for the mentee to get to know the mentor as well, because again, this is about really building this tight relationship.
I think a key component to being a good mentor is to really be a good active listener. People come to you for advice, but you really need to listen to the mentee, understand where they're coming from, because it's easy to share your story, but really to add on to what you said, Sue, when you know the individual, then you can help guide them, but you got to listen to what they're asking for at the time, because it may not be what you just want to, comes off the top of your head to deliver. And I think that's an important thing, and I think that takes time for most of us to think about that, because it's easy to do stuff that we know, but to really kind of say what's best for this individual at this point in their life may not have been what was the right thing for you at the time. So an active listener, I think, on both sides, actually, the mentor and the mentee, is really critical. The other part of this is really talking about joint expectations. I reflect back on what you said a little while ago. You're getting ready, as you're working on this grant and people are coming to you. I'm guessing you want to help them, and the issue is how much time do you have available? So be honest with that. I can help with this. I would love to do more, but I can't do more right now. If that works for you, I'm happy to be in this relationship mentoring you. But if not, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pass now. Feel free to come talk to me again later. And that's kind of the same kind of thing about giving feedback and the whole idea of candor. Be honest. Don't, sugarcoat is not the right word, but just be true to yourself and to the individual, because the relationship will be stronger because of that. Sometimes those are difficult conversations because you want to help other people, but there's only so much time in the day. You can't be the mentor for everyone, and you want to make sure the relationships that you have are good ones. So be honest about it.
So if people who have been mentors for a long time can share tips on how to motivate your mentees for specific things, because mentorship is clearly an active process, but there are times when you want to gear them to a certain direction that is good for their path that they've already highlighted or outlined. So how, ways that you've used to motivate people?
So I'm not going to remember the title of this book. I'll get it and give it back to the group. But I think motivation, for me, comes from telling a story, to engage people in kind of the vision, what you're looking at. And so if you can pull people in by a story that's compelling to them, then they get hooked. And they can see where they want to go. But sometimes they can't see it very clearly, and just telling them doesn't work, right? You got to get there in a different way where there's some emotional component to it so they're bought into it. So I think storytelling is great for lots of reasons to motivate people, but it's picking the right story that will work.
I think this is a loaded question because I don't believe that you can make anybody do anything. So that's part of that negotiated relationship, and I think a wise mentor picks up signals in the environment where there could be some avoidance that's happening because there's a deeper problem. So you're kind of playing part psychologist in the situation as well. And people that are paired up through formal mentoring programs don't get to this level, right? Because it's something institution has set forward and department chairs have to comply with it, and it's very stifling in a way. Unless you make a good match and there's good chemistry, you might get lucky. But I'm co-chairing a mentorship advisory committee at our children's hospital, and there are assigned relationships, and I'm not so sure when I look at each one of them, knowing the people that I know that I've known for over 20 years, that it's necessarily going to work, but it is the assigned relationship. So I think there's some clues that you have to pick up when people are not necessarily delivering or meeting the grade or keeping pace with whatever it is. And then it's time to have a very different conversation, and that is where your skills really can come through, right? Because if sometimes the most valuable conversation that you could have is, this isn't working for me, I need to do something different, I need to take a different pathway, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And it only comes from, as Susan pointed out, really active listening, facial, looking at the, what's happening in a person's face and their body language. And they may be, and because there is somewhat of a hierarchical setup there, particularly if you're using a more higher ranked individual, they may be fearful to tell you that. I've had that happen to me where people are very afraid they're going to let me down, or I don't want to be like you, Jill. And I have to right away correct that, because the goal is not to have somebody be like me. The goal is for them to use what wisdom I've gained and for me to share that in many different ways. So I think that you hit on something there, but it can be quite difficult. And I've actually had people come to me where they're in tension and distress with their assigned mentor, because that person is really really pushing them, write the K or do something else. And you know what? There's something that is not letting them do that has to be uncovered.
Yeah, I think a good characteristic for a mentor is to actually set high expectations, but then to be very tolerant of failure. I had a conversation with one of my faculty people last night. Read this book, where it suggested that if you're not failing at least twice a month, then you're not pushing yourself and you're not outside your comfort zone. And so we're trying as mentors to get our mentees outside their comfort zone and into an area where they can stretch. But that means they're going to fail, and you have to, as a mentor, be tolerant of failure and help them to see that failure is actually a good thing, because they're stretching and they're learning and they're growing, and they're going to, not fly every single time. They're going to fall out of the tree once or twice. But you just get up and you try to fly again. And that's what a mentor does, is to set that expectation and to set that goal, but then to be tolerant of failure when it doesn't happen all the time.
I have a question about, Jill, about your presentation. You said that a good mentor should prepare you to advocate for yourself when you go and speak to your chair. And I'm wondering if there was like a specific scenario that made you say that, or if you can just, one of my views of like a good mentor is someone that also advocates for you when you might not be ready to because you're new to the faculty or because you don't know the politics of the department. And when might it be okay to ask your mentor to do that, or how should they prepare you? I just would love more context on that.
So I had that done to me in an unfavorable way, and it made it look like someone was fighting my battles, and it belittled the opinion of the chair of me. And I didn't ask for that to happen, but it happened, and I realized that that was fairly damaging, and so I sort of have made it a practice to work on coaching somebody through a conversation. Let's talk about what you want to get out of the conversation. There are so many resources that you can read. Crucial conversations, how to manage up, blah, blah, blah. You can find all these things that teach you how to do that. But, you can do formal role playing, but I think, it never hurts. Practice, 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 right? That person is there for you, and they may not have the exact perspective of a chair, but they've been through meetings with the chair, and one of the things they can help you with is, how that chair has made decisions in the past, or have a more global view of the priorities of the department, or how is that person situated within the institution, what else is going on. They are giving you clues to the environment. They are scanning the landscape, and they are helping you to put the picture together more than just your little micro transaction that's occurring between them and the chair. Does that make sense? So broadening that context, bringing out the concepts, giving some pointers, it makes you more effective than if somebody went in and did that on your behalf, and you have to practice. You cannot get better. It's like anything else, negotiation, research. You have to practice, and you have to fail lots of times before you feel a competency. So I don't necessarily think advocacy is one thing, a little offhanded comment. I loved when I was chair when my more senior faculty would say, I'm working with so-and-so on getting this done. This person really they're ramping up into their, terminal year of assistant professorship, and I just want to let you know that I've required them to turn in 3 papers for me this year. And boy, that was a joy to me as a chair, because I knew that somebody else between me and them was actually looking out for that person. So that was terrific, and that's a form of advocacy that's great, and they let me know about that. But I think you can cross the line where you're actually looking like you're fighting someone's battle, and I think for women in particular, that can be very dangerous. Does that get the context? Okay.